Right, so welcome to Evolution TV. I'm Dev Modi, your host, and I'm interviewing Glenn Harrold. Thank you, Glenn, for joining me today for this interview.
You are welcome, Dev. It's always a pleasure.
Well, I'm just going to share a little bit about you because I'm sure the audience would like to know about who you are and some of your great achievements, and then we'll get a chance to get into a free-flowing conversation which just takes us wherever our interest goes, really. But I guess the essence of the channel is around social impact and change. So,
Mm.
in terms of your background, what I've got here, you've sold over 10 million hypnosis CDs, MP3 downloads, and apps, which is
Mm.
incredible. And that's over a 25-year long career.
Yeah.
You're a self-help author for Orion in the UK and McGraw-Hill in the USA, and you produced over 140 meditation audios published through BBC Audios. And I think you also mentioned Divinity Publishing, which is your company, but you've got
Yeah.
some apps as well. I think you mentioned Insight. Is it Insight Timer?
So Insight Timer, yeah, that's the biggest meditation app in the world now
Wow.
because meditation has become big business. When I started, there was just a handful of us,
Right.
but now the corporates are involved and there's these sort of billion-dollar apps floating around like Calm and things like that, and they're very corporate. But Insight Timer is, for me, it's my favorite other meditation app because what it is, it started off as a free meditation app, and they've just added more and more authors over time, and there's literally thousands and thousands of self-help authors in there. There's people like Eckhart Tolle, Moji, all the very big names in self-help.
Right.
And there's probably the 75% of the content on there is completely free.
Wow. Fantastic.
I've got 6 or 7 recordings on there, and
Mhm.
I've had 6 million plays on there and 100,000 5-star reviews, and I'm actually the number one male author on there with
Wow.
130,000 followers. There's 5 ladies ahead of me, so all power to the girls.
Well, that's great. That's fantastic. And you've also appeared on lots of the mainstream TV channels as well over the years. You've got a
Yeah.
BBC, you've got Five Live, Sky Sport Channel 4, many of the British newspapers and magazine articles. So, I mean, essentially, you're someone who's well known and established and expert in this whole field of hypnotherapy, meditation. You're someone who's really dedicated your life to really helping people,
Mm.
which is a fantastic calling that you're living right now. So, is there anything I've missed out in your background?
No, that's pretty much it in a
Yeah.
nutshell, and yeah, it has been a calling, it really has, because as I said, when I got into hypnotherapy 25 years ago, it was something that, where I was looking to transform my life, to change or find a career that was worthwhile, that
Mm.
meant something to me. Because at the time, before that, I was driving a mini cab around the West End, and I was playing guitar in clubs and bars just to make
Wow,
a living. So I was kind of
amazing.
hustling, hustling my way through life. And, my dad had a successful business in South London. It was a printing business. And he used to say, "Oh, come on, I'll come and work for me. I'll give you a company car and, 40 grand, 50 grand a year or whatever." But I wasn't interested in it. My heart wasn't in that kind of business.
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad I carried on cab driving. And then eventually I, found a good hypnotherapy course in London. I did the course, 2-year diploma with the British School of Clinical Hypnosis. I absolutely loved it. And I started to, also work on myself at the time, and really get myself clear and clean and focused on what I wanted to achieve in life. And really that was the turning point. I never looked back from that, and I kind of entered hypnotherapy, the world of hypnotherapy, at a good time. It wasn't very crowded back then. But now they say, there's more hypnotherapists in the UK, for example, than anywhere else in the world,
Wow.
because there's a lot of there's so many courses and colleges there, plus my recordings and other recordings have sort of gone all around the country. Paul McKenna's had his TV shows, so there's been a lot of interest in hypnotherapy over the years.
Wow.
So
So you
I'm kind
got
of
the
lucky. I
term.
made my name at a good time.
Yeah, it sounds like you had the courage to step out and do something different. You dedicated yourself and you caught a trend at the right time, and you're in the
Mm.
right place to kind of ride that, and you continue to create and contribute and make a difference.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, one of my favorite meditations back then, or affirmations, I should say, was that I used to do this religiously over and over again when I was driving my cab around the West End. I'd be saying, I'm always in the right place at the right time. Abundance comes freely and naturally to me. All of my needs are constantly met. And I
right.
probably said that, those three phrases, I probably said them like a million times
Wow.
because
Yeah.
I believed, that I needed to change from the inside out.
Mm,
And that was, so I was, when I discovered self-help and realized I could do that, I immersed myself in it in so many different ways. Because, to give a little bit of the backstory, I was flat broke up until I was in, early 30s, mid 30s, totally broke, never earned more than, 1,000 a month really.
wow.
And at school, I was kicked out of school when I was 15. I got no qualifications. I slept rough on the streets when I was a young kid at times. I ran with a bad crowd. First name terms with the local magistrate. It
Okay,
was a real,
I never knew all of this about you, by the way, and I've known you for 4 years, so this is pretty amazing.
yeah. Well, I never tend to broadcast
Yeah,
the bad stuff. I just
yeah.
post the highlights now. No, I mean, I'm quite happy to talk about my
No, it's
past
really
because
helpful. It's very
yeah, it kind of,
helpful.
I grew up in a very dysfunctional household. My mum was very violent, and so I'd run away from home, and I had a lot of negative programming and conditioning,
Mm,
and even my school was extremely strict, so I rebelled against that, and I was a product of my home life, so I was, not really setting the world on fire at that time, and
yeah.
and, and as I got older, I became aware of all this negativity, this low confidence, low self-esteem, lack of belief, lack of opportunities. And I knew I had to fix it. And really, it was actually one night I was playing a show in a duo and we shared the bill with the stage hypnotist. And I was standing backstage and watching this guy on stage manipulate the audience by using hypnosis. And it
Mhm.
just absolutely captivated me. I
Right.
found it so fascinating. And in that moment, I saw the power of hypnosis and what it could do. And I knew I didn't want to do the stage thing. It wasn't about making people dance around like chickens and do outrageous things on the stage. It was the power of it. And I knew that if I could, harness those techniques, I could transform myself. And that led me to the hypnotherapy course.
Right. Right.
And that
And
was,
so, how old were you when that happened?
I was probably around early 30s.
Early
It
30s.
was, yeah, it was the late, yeah, early to mid 30s. So it would have
Right.
been about 1995, somewhere around there.
Right.
And then I did a
Yeah.
2 year diploma and I really enjoyed it. And even for me, sitting in a classroom setting after having such a traumatic school life, I found that difficult, as a 30-year-old sitting in a classroom because I had all this failure conditioning and, you're no good. And it was just, I struggled big time, but I persevered and I was using the techniques I was learning, so as I was being taught how to, boost my confidence and that kind of thing, I was using those techniques and it was
Mhm.
working for me. So I took little steps forward and yeah.
I think what's incredible about your story, then, and as we continue this conversation, you can hopefully share more, is that success has come not necessarily easily to you in terms of you've been on a roller coaster, and
Mm,
it's good for people to know that because sometimes it's easy to think, well, oh, Glenn's so successful, I'm sure he comes from privilege, for example. People might make that judgment about you. Say,
yeah.
oh, yeah, I'm sure Glenn comes from like, amazing background, had everything given to him on a silver plate. He's so successful, he's so together. Um, but actually, the truth of the matter is that's not the case.
No,
That's not the case at all. And it's not that just that you through your childhood, but I guess from having conversations with you in the past, you've been through
mm,
your various ups and downs in your life as well.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you sometimes, the reason that I was good with clients and kind of understood addictions and phobias and that kind of thing, anxiety issues, low confidence, because I'd been through all that myself.
Yeah.
So when you've got a client sitting in front of you and they're struggling with, some kind of addiction, I know what it's like because I was, addicted to drink, alcohol at one point. I had hepatitis when I was 17. My liver packed up.
Wow.
And
Okay. I didn't
yeah,
know
it was
that.
bad. It was, I
Crazy.
started drinking when I was 13 and got to 17 and boom, I just went yellow one day and my liver had gone. And so I understand that, I've
Yeah.
got the real empathy for people. I've got the real understanding what it's like to be absolutely on the floor.
Yeah.
And so coming from that point as a therapist, with the techniques and those kind of things, I knew how to really connect with people. And I think when you've had those experiences, people tend to have faith in you, knowing that you've got over it.
Yeah.
They sense that, they sense there's something real there. And I enjoyed it as well. I loved helping people. Once I'd sorted myself out, well, I'm still on that path. I've never met anyone who's worked out completely. We're all a work in progress.
Yeah.
And, but once I'd cleared a lot of those things that held me back so much, I really enjoyed helping other people. There's no nicer feeling than when somebody tells you they've got over a big problem because of your help. It's a lovely feeling. It's so rewarding and uplifting.
Mm.
And that's the thing. So I've still got an absolute passion for healing and therapy and helping people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just kind of think back to when I first met you, and it was really because of your son introducing me to you, Lee saying, "Oh, my dad's someone who does all this kind of stuff as his main job, and he's a well-known hypnotherapist. You should definitely meet up with him." So I
Mm,
remember coming to Spain, and that time you were here in
yeah,
South Spain, and you'd made the move, and you were living the lifestyle. And I thought, well, this is someone who's figured out things. And I remember meeting up with you frequently. You've always been very, very generous with your time, your energy, your tips.
yeah,
And I feel really grateful to have met you because I think there are people who, on their way up,
mm,
start to become more and more exclusive
mm,
in some ways. They no longer want to necessarily share their secrets or what they've been through because they go into a different circle. And
mm,
one thing I've always found with you is that you're so down to earth and you're so approachable, and
mm,
you don't have that sense of higher or lower, or I'm more of a success than so and so. You're just super open.
yeah.
And maybe that is just something that you always had naturally. You're like that, but it
I
just
th-
really helps with the connection.
I think having slept in train stations and on park benches when I was younger, and mixed with some rough people from that time, it kind of you never lose that thing that you know, you're, we're all the same. We're all the same flesh and blood, aren't we? And, I always remember a really interesting, when I was driving the minicab around the West End, before I became a hypnotherapist, I would literally meet everyone from, the lowest of the low to the highest of the high. I met loads of celebrities at that time, pick them up in my cab, and I'd drive them to places. And I had some amazing experiences. I really did. I could write a book on those times. And I remember one time I picked up these two girls. It was collar and tie work. So I used to wear a collar and tie, and I'd be driving around the West End. You get a call, and most of it was on account. But I remember this one job. It was two girls, and they were prostitutes, and they just finished working their shift, and they wanted to score some heroin.
Right.
I'm thinking, oh my God, and it's quite a heavy fare, but they threw this money at me. They threw like 100 quid at me and said, no, drive up to wherever it was. And we drove to this place, couldn't get it, and then we went to another place, and I got chatting to them, and they were, they were very lost. They were lost souls, but they were nice people, and I got on with them. And we're having a bit of a laugh and a joke, and eventually they found a flat where they got their gear, and they left, and they took off, and they were very grateful that I stuck with it and taken them there. And then I drove down to a theatre company. This was the very next job.
Right.
And I got up in the lift and came out, and there was Prince Edward there.
Really?
And
Wow.
he was when he was young, and he
Okay.
was working for this theatre company, and we were loading up the lift. you know, his security guys were in the background, but it was just me and him loading the lift up.
Prince Edward, the Prince Edward.
The
He was
Prince Edward,
he was
the Queen's
working. He
son.
was working. He actually had a
Yeah. Yeah, he was working for this theatre company,
job.
and we're chatting away, wherever, you know. It was on the tip of my lips to say, "How's your mum?" But I couldn't bring myself to say it. You know, I thought no. But we were having this conversation,
Yeah,
and you know, laughing and joking again, and that kind of summed up what it was like doing that job, because
yeah.
literally I'd been with the two girls, and then this, you know, the prince, and over time I met everyone in between. I really did, you know, and
Yeah.
there was another really
He,
interesting
he
one.
didn't ask you for the same thing then. He didn't ask you for the heroin.
No, no,
No.
no. I think
I
that was his
wasn't
brother.
sure where
That's probably
that
his
story
brother.
was going.
No, that was a
That
really
came
interesting.
later. That came when he met what's his name? Yeah. I
Yeah,
won't mention.
the dodgy one. Yeah, but a number of I used to another job I used to have at that time was I used to pick Julie Waters up from
Really?
a theatre company and used to take her
Okay.
down to Guildford, and
Amazing.
she was an absolute diamond, you know, just as you see her, just as she is on the screen. And I used to say, "Do you mind if I play some music?" Because it was we'd have a little chat and then I'd play some music, and she'd say, "No, that's all right." And I always remember one day we got to near her house, and she said, "Could you turn the music down a little bit because my baby's probably asleep in the house?" And I remember thinking, I was mortified because I thought, "Oh God, I've had it up too loud." And you know, but she was so sweet. She never complained all that journey, and we got there, and she asked for me a couple of times to pick her up and take her down. So I had a nice rapport with her. And years later, when I signed with Orion, my
Yeah.
publisher, they had their main conference down in Eastbourne, and they chose three authors to speak at the conference. And it was Jamelia, the singer, myself, and Julie Waters.
Wow,
So,
incredible.
and I don't know why for the life of me I didn't tell this story on stage, because I was being interviewed on stage. It was like, you know, I remember walking down this gangway and I was getting clapped on stage by like 1,000 people, and I was on the stage, and you know, it was a big deal. It was very, you know, la-di-da, and I, you know, it was early on in my career, so I didn't quite, I should have, this, it was such a great story to go full circle with being Julie Walters' cab driver and then sharing a stage with her. But I didn't, it was funny, at that time I didn't have the confidence to tell the story, and I've always regretted not telling it.
Did she not
Probably,
recognize you then? She didn't
no,
recognize you?
no, she
Ah.
didn't. She probably didn't expect the cab driver to be on the stage with her.
You thought, oh, he looks familiar. I'm not sure where I've
He's
met him
picking
before.
someone up.
That is fantastic story. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It was a really, I'm so glad I had that experience, you know, and did all that, because I did, you know, and it was directly before I became a hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'd have these people that got in my car, and they'd be from all walks of life,
Mm.
literally, you know, millionaires, billionaires, princes, you know, down to the people on the streets. And it was a really good precursor to becoming a hypnotherapist, because, you know, as a hypnotherapist, I was dealing with, you know, all kinds of people, all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
And it was great. And, you know, I had a really, another time, I'll tell you, have I got time for another story?
Oh yeah. I mean, we've got plenty of time. We've got
There
another
was,
probably 40 minutes. So.
there was another time I was driving the cab, and I got picked up this fella from up in it was Mayfair, somewhere around Mayfair, and
Yeah.
he had grey hair, like in back in a ponytail. He was probably about 60, and he had an Indian lady that was his wife with him. I couldn't remember her name, but and they said, "Oh, should we go to Annabelle's or should we go to Tramps?" And those two clubs were the most exclusive clubs in London at the time. And I remember thinking, he's optimistic, isn't he? You know, how's he going to get into those places? But and we got, I was chatting away to him, and we got outside Tramps, and he said, "I tell you what, old boy, do you want to come in with us?" And so I'm thinking, well, if he can get me into Tramps, I'll take that, you know. And so we walked into Tramps, and as soon as we got to the door, he was getting the red carpet treatment, you know, straight into the VIP bit, and you know, there was me with him. And we got to the bar, and he started ordering these sort of 500-pound bottles of champagne, and I'm sitting at the bar there drinking with him and his wife, and And then he said to me, Michael Caine came over, the actor Michael Caine. He said, oh,
Yeah.
Michael, this is my friend Glenn. And he's introduced me to Michael Caine. He said, oh, I'm waiting for my friend Bob's coming down. And I found out later he was talking about Bob Dylan. So I'm surrounded by these A-listers and he's introducing me to them. And I'm thinking, how did I get here? I was driving a cab around the West End 2 hours ago, and now I'm sitting in the most exclusive nightclub in London with all these A-listers around me.
Right, right.
And then some fella came over and he said, do you know who this guy is, don't you? I said, I haven't got a clue. I said, I just know his first name. And I said, he seems like a very nice gent. He's buying all my drinks. And he said, he's the heir to the Guinness fortune. He was one of the Guinness family, and he'd said something about having a castle in Ireland, and his wife was an Indian princess.
Really? So he was
Yes,
Irish himself, was he?
he was he was an Irish fella, and
Married to an Indian princess.
and he was married to an Indian princess. And this guy was telling me, and I'm thinking, wow, this is an interesting night. So anyway, I stayed in Tramps that night, and we hung out. And at the end of the night, I took them both home. And he said, look, I tell you what, old boy, come over to the castle. He gave me his phone number. He said, come over to the castle in Ireland. We'll hang out for the weekend. We'll have a great time. And so I think, God, that would do me. And so I went back to the cab office, and the guy, it was a little Turkish fella, he went, where have you been all night? He said, I've been calling you. I said, I've been in Tramps nightclub with Michael Caine and Bob Dylan. And he went, you lying... Well, I won't say what he said, but he called me a lying bee. And he wouldn't believe it. None of them would believe I'd had the night I'd had.
So did you end up phoning him up and going to the castle?
I did ring him up, but I could never get through. I never got through. So I didn't go to Ireland, but that was it. That night was enough. It was such a great night and a great memory.
That is so interesting. So interesting.
It's
I
funny.
remember there's one person I know in my network. Uh, he's a guy called Anil Agarwal, and he's this billionaire. He's an Indian billionaire
Mm,
who runs this big kind of mining company and steel and all sorts of stuff.
mm,
So because of some of the people I know in my network, I'd met him at a friend's house who know him quite well, and I'd talked to him. And the reason why this reminds me is just about the kind of the powerful and the influential, and how you sometimes can kind of get their mobile number. Because I ended up
yeah.
getting a mobile number, and he said, "Oh yeah, give me a call because I'm always up for helping people out,
Mm,
mentoring, and this, that, and the other." And I thought, well, great, I've got this guy's mobile number. So I just called him, like literally a week later. I just plucked up the courage and I called him. And I
mm,
must have interrupted him during some very, very important meeting. And he probably forgot that he even gave me his number, because he said, "Oh, who is this?" I said my name. He clearly did not have a clue who I was. And he said, "Oh,
yeah.
can you call my PA? And, I'm very busy right now." And I realized that he maybe was a little bit drunk when I'd spoken to him before, or maybe just wasn't quite with it. But
He probably meant it in that moment, didn't he?
he meant it in the
But then,
moment. He was intoxicated on happiness, should I say?
yeah,
He was a very happy fellow, very spiritual, really, really
yeah,
nice guy, actually. And I think in
yeah.
the moment he meant it, but then the realization that then I'd be phoning him and interrupting his meeting didn't go down too well. But sometimes you've just
It's
got to
timing,
go
isn't
for
it?
it.
A lot of the time, it's
It's got
timing.
to, yeah, exactly. It's timing, and then sometimes just having the guts to pick up the phone and follow
Yeah.
through on something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think, that was the thing with myself that I was, because I'd had so few opportunities when I was younger, whenever an opportunity came along, I'd always grab it with both hands, no matter how small it was.
Yeah.
And I still tend to do that a little bit now. If even if small opportunities come along, I think, oh, that could be good, and I'll go for it. And I sometimes get a bit take too much on.
Right, right.
But it's kind of hardwired in me now because I didn't have those opportunities when I was young, so it's something. But it's a good habit to get into, taking opportunities, and I was always good at spotting things. When things came on my radar,
Yeah.
I'd always be good at thinking that could lead to that, and taking my chances. I think that's, as an entrepreneur, you have to have that sort of boldness and be brave. Be brave with things and take chances. I've taken chances with things that haven't worked out and bombed. Probably often, I've been in phases where more things have bombed than have actually worked out.
So
But the
Ken,
big,
could you kind of give us an idea of, I guess, some of the things that have really bombed, because it would be good
yeah,
for us to know
yeah,
what were those things and how did you end up bombing on those? And then also some of the things that you've taken a punt on being really successful with. Because
yeah.
talking to you,
I,
I know you're involved in lots of different types of businesses, so I think it'll
yeah.
be intriguing for people.
Well, one of the things that did kind of bomb was that once I'd started to, sell a lot of cassettes back in the day,
Yeah,
I was selling cassettes to start with, and then CDs, and pretty much through the sort of 2000 to 2010, maybe I was selling more self-help CDs in the UK than anyone. They were just flying off the shelves, and because I got into Waterstones and places like that, all the big stores, so my
yeah,
physical products were all over the UK, and we were in a load of chain stores in WH Smiths. I did a big deal with them. So I bought a big warehouse at that time, 2007. I bought a warehouse with 3 stories, and it had a big. It had a warehouse at the bottom, and then it was offices above and at the very top, and I had 10 girls working for me, doing the admin and shipping the stock out into Waterstones and WH Smiths. And then because we had all this space, I then diversified into selling other alternative products.
right.
Like I was creating my own brand of Hopi ear candles and detox foot patches and things like that. Because I
Yeah,
like those products myself. I did like them,
yeah,
but and I was literally having shipments coming over from, China and India and places like that, where it was, I was getting them branded out there, and they were coming over, stocking up the warehouse, and then we were shipping them out.
yeah,
But it was quite a hard business. We were making the use of the space and the outlets we had because we were in a number of stores, but the margins were so small. It was tight margins, and you had to sell tons and tons of them to make a profit. And also, it wasn't really my thing. I went into hypnotherapy with a passion, and I loved making recordings. And being a musician, I was able to make recordings that were unique. And that was my vocation. I was so lucky to find my true vocation. So selling ear candles and foot patches was not really it. So, it did kind of bomb. It didn't blow up in our face or anything like that, but we just eventually eased it out and faded it away.
yeah.
But around that same time, so this is an example of one that really worked out. And this was a thing where I was using the law of attraction and that kind of thing. And what it was, I got to a point where I'd sold about 500,000 cassettes, and the BBC came along, and they were the biggest audiobook producer at the time. And I signed up for them. They wanted to buy my whole catalogue, but I knew it wasn't the right thing to do. So I ended up making new recordings for them. And then they said to me, you should really get a book deal because you've got a platform now. You've sold this amount of cassettes. You should, So I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll get a book deal. Not realizing how hard that actually is. So I went back into my office, and I said to one of the girls there, could you get me a meeting with some of these agents, literary agents? And again, that's a really hard thing to do, but I didn't realize it at the time. I was very naive. And after an hour, Claire came back to me and she said, I can't get past the receptionist. They're all saying, just send your manuscript in.
Right.
And I thought, oh, that's not good. So I went to the white pages. I picked out the first literary agent in there. I forget their name now. I can't remember the name. And I rang the number, spoke to the receptionist. I said, I just was speaking to somebody in the new buying department, and I got cut off. I said, could you put me back through to them? So I bypassed the girl on reception, got through to the new buying department, but it was an answer machine message.
Right.
So I left an answer machine message, and I thought I really went for it. I said, I've sold 500,000 cassettes. Just signed a deal with the BBC, and I've got these ideas for books, and I really sold myself and left this message. Well, a week later, somebody from Curtis Brown, who were the biggest literary agent at the time, I didn't realize I'd picked them out. This guy phoned me back from Curtis Brown. He said, yeah, I heard your message. I was walking past the office and someone played me your I just overheard it. He said, come up to London for a meeting. He said, I'd like to meet you.
Yeah.
So I went up there, and he was quite early on in his career. He was a young guy. He was a Man United fan, so we were talking about football, and he was very on the level, and
Yeah.
we kind of bonded. You know, he wasn't, you know, a lot of literary agents are older people and, you know, a bit distant, but this guy was young and he was on the level, and I got on really well with him. And he said, look, he said, I like your ideas. He said, we'll go around. I'll take you around to all the big publishers. And he said, we'll go in together. He said, normally I'd go on my own. He said, but because we've got a bit of a rapport together, we'll go to these meetings together. So that was it. So 2 days we had meetings with Warner Brothers, Orion, HarperCollins, and about 3 other big name publishers. And I've been using the law of attraction before this to get a book deal.
Right.
And so when I got to this point, I was visualizing walking into these offices, really confident, filling up the room with this positive energy and really enjoying these meetings. And so I met Sam, we went round to the meetings, you know, and I just went for it. I was really full of confidence when I walked into the room with each one. I sold myself, and after 2 days we came out, we went into a coffee shop, and we were both buzzing. You know, we knew they'd gone well, the meetings. And I said, well, how do you think it would go? And he said to me, well, he said, you could possibly, you know, if we got a 20,000 advance for 2 books, he said, that would be amazing. That would be fantastic. So I said, yeah, I'd take that every day of the week. Well, after about 3 or 4 days, he said, we've got these calls. He said, we've got Warner Brothers and Orion who've gone into a blind auction with you. They've both offered 150,000 for 3 books.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. I was, you know, I thought this law of attraction stuff really does work. And in the end, I ended up signing for quite a bit more than that for 3 books. And then I got re-signed for another 2 books after that. And then I did a deal with McGraw-Hill out in the States, because my agent was very smart, and he got me a deal with them, you know, because he kept the territories separate.
Right.
So, you know, to take the story back to, that was me putting my finger into a book and then ringing up, bypassing the lady on reception and leaving a message that Sam heard when he walked past.
Crazy.
Led to that. And
what was the final offer then, Glenn? You kind of glossed over
it
that.
was, well, it was actually, I actually, over the 2 deals, 400,000 for 5
Amazing.
books.
That's crazy amount of money.
And they then offered me another 300,000 for all of my audios at the time. But it was exclusive, you know. It meant that every audio after that I'd have to make for them, so they kind of own everything about everything I did.
Yeah.
And you know, it was a lot of money at the time, but my intuition was telling me not to go there.
Yeah.
And again, that was such a good move, because, you know, I got onto the App Store later on, you know, but they wouldn't have done that. Yeah. They wouldn't have known. They would have just sold into the main high street stores, and they wouldn't have opened up those opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a really good move. But they told me at the time that no one in the UK had been offered that kind of advance for audiobooks. You get those big advances for books, but it's normally only sort of A-list celebrities who get those. But as far as audiobooks, that was a record offer at the time. So,
it's massive.
And I turned it down. So that was an example of how, you know, I made one really good move that opened so many doors and led me on a different path. And it was an interesting journey, because, you know, up to that point I'd been totally self-published, and I'd been, you know, just finding my way on instinct and gut feeling. And then suddenly I'd be sitting around this huge boardroom table with a dozen people there talking about the Glenn Harrold brand. And I literally, I had cardboard cutouts of me in W.H. Smith's at that time. Yeah. People were telling me, they're phoning me up saying, I've just seen your cardboard cutout. And it was quite surreal. It was a really strange thing. And at the time, I really wanted to, you know, the books I was writing, I wanted to go in a more spiritual direction, because I was into that. I was waking up. But they saw me as like a very mainstream, straight hypnotherapist, you know, kind of in the Paul McKenna mold. But that, I didn't want that, and it wasn't me. I used to say, I'm not like him, you know, I'm my own. And I didn't have a lot of control over it. That was the thing. They put so much money into me that they wanted me to go that route. The spirit. So anything spiritual in my books got edited out.
Really? Okay.
And it was a real shame because they didn't sell as well as they'd hoped. You know, I sold a few 100,000, but they were hoping for millions. That was the goal. And I used, the last book I ever wrote for them was called The Answer. And that had, you know, it was more the law of attraction, using hypnosis and the law of attraction, a bit of spirituality in there. And that's been their bestseller. So I kind of finally, yeah. And it made me realize, you know, those things are amazing. You know, you suddenly get this deal with a major publisher and you're, you know, up there. And, you know, I'd walk into Tesco's and I'd see that I was number 3 in the charts in Tesco's, you know, and it was quite amazing. But because they have that reach, they have that power to get you right in the front of house. But at the same time, they also control you. You know, you don't have a lot of say in the direction that you're going in. So it was a bit of a double-edged sword in the end. And
Did you write? How did you go through the process of writing books? Did you do it on your own? Did you get help from anyone?
the first 3 books I wrote completely on my own. And literally, I remember going to this meeting with them and they said, "What's your bestseller on audio?" And I said, "It's Complete Relaxation." And they said, "Right, that can be your first book." I remember thinking, well, that's not the greatest title in the world for a book. And so I said, so I came up with De-Stress Your Life in 7 Days.
Right.
That was the title. And I remember thinking, they're not too sure what they want to do with me here. So I went away and I had 3 months to write the first book. That was the thing. So I was kind of fortunate at that time that I could, I lived in a quiet place, big house. I used to have a big conservatory at the back and it overlooked fields, and I just sat out in the conservatory for 14 hours a day just writing, because I had this deadline and there was no argument. I had to deliver the manuscript at this time. If I didn't, I wouldn't have got some of the advance.
Right.
That was part of the deal. You've got to deliver it on that day. So I'd be writing for 14 hours a day out in the conservatory, just absolutely going for it, and really wanting to write something that had value and gravitas in it. And when I look back at that first book, I read it now and it has got that in it, but it lacked a bit of, what's the word? It was, the structure of it probably let it down a little bit. I didn't get any help. The thing was, when I signed, I had a choice between Warner Brothers and Orion. And I remember my agent said, they were both offering exactly the same deal. And I said to my agent, I said, well, which one shall I go for? And he said, well, the lady at Warner Brothers has just fallen pregnant, so you won't have that continuity there. So on that basis, I went with Orion. And when I signed with Orion, my editor there had 3 babies in the 5 years I was there. So I had a different editor on each book, which again didn't help the cause, because they were learning about me each time. So anyway, I wrote that book in 3 months. It went out. I remember going to this really fancy photographer up in London. I had all these people buffing me up, taking pictures of me, and the picture they used in the end, I don't know, it had a green background, and it just didn't cut it. It wasn't good. I've had mates who've done photo shoots with me that I've had better results.
Yeah.
And again, but I didn't have any control. I had to go with the cover they decided. So, I've always done best when I've used my intuition, my gut feeling, and I've got an eye for detail. I can look at things and think, yeah, that will work. People will connect with that, or they'll hear that recording and they'll like it. But when you're with a big company like that, you often hear bands talk about it when they're with record companies. They get restricted and their creativity gets a bit dented, or they're not allowed to do certain things. They'll, for a creative person, that's very stifling. So I wouldn't change anything that happened back then. It was amazing. And Orion have actually re-released those 4 books. They've reformatted them. They've now got really good covers on them. January last year, they re-released them.
Oh, okay. Congratulations.
So it's gone full circle, and, but it's been a great journey. It's been a really interesting journey, and I learned so much about it. But if I was in that situation again with a big publisher that came along, I'd make sure that I had a lot more control over the direction of my career.
So are you the kind of person that's very self-sufficient? Because it sounds like a lot of what you've done in your life, you've tapped into your intuition, and you've not had really anyone else out there, like a mentor or a coach or someone to support you. You've kind of just figured it out independently of anyone. And even when you have the publisher kind of helping you, it kind of almost got in the way of you finding yourself. So I'm
Mm,
just wondering, is that being really good for you? Is that more of a personality style or trait that you have, that you like to be kind of on your own and doing things and you
mm.
work best like that? Or do you tend to collaborate and partner with people to create stuff? What's been the best for you?
I think, the thing when I was very young, I didn't always have the support that you should have as a kid, so I always learnt to be very, very independent from a young age
Yeah,
because I had to be. I didn't have support. I never had any mentors as an adult, as a young kid, adults
yeah,
mentoring me. And, so I learnt to be very self-sufficient, self-motivated, and I'm still like that now. I trust my own judgment. I don't always get it right, but by and large, I know that most of the decisions I make are good. But I have also collaborated with other people, musicians, and the last thing I did was, or the last but one recording I made was Quit Alcohol with Janie Lee Grace, who's the Radio 2 presenter.
right. Okay.
And I've done recordings with Janie before that. I made 3 pregnancy recordings, and so I do if the right thing comes along at the right time and it resonates, then I will partner up with someone and
Right.
do it. But I've got to feel it. I've got to feel it's the right thing. And but yeah, so I do have that sort of innate self motivation and self reliance.
Right.
You
So
know.
I suppose for people who are watching this, they're probably feeling quite inspired, I guess, in terms of your journey and feeling like, wow, if Glenn can do it given your circumstances, then surely if I commit myself, I can achieve some great things, because you've achieved amazing things with your books, your CDs, the fact that you've done so much of that on your own, really, without any mentoring or guidance or support from anyone. It's extraordinary, it really
Mm.
is. So tell us a little bit about your kind of your life right now. Where are you based? And also, what kind of tips do you have for people who are really wanting to live in a better way, more purpose-driven way? What are some of the kind of takeaways that they can take?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm living out in a place called Lagos on the Algarve in Portugal, and it's a lovely place. It's really great. It's I know you and Raj are going to visit us soon,
Yeah,
and
we
you
definitely want
you were
to.
going to come over before the lockdown, weren't you? It was a real shame that
Oh,
didn't happen, but hopefully after the lockdown we'll see you soon.
definitely.
Yeah, I think the thing that turned my life around, and this is something that anyone can do. You have to be really clear about what it is you want to achieve. So list your goals, write them down. Maybe have 5 really clear goals that you want to achieve.
Yeah,
And when I very first started, I learned about hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and goal setting. I'd have these, long list of personal goals, career goals, and that kind of thing, and I wrote them down in detail. And then what I would do is I'd use self hypnosis to go into an altered state of consciousness, get very relaxed, get my mind very quiet, through my breathing, and get into that still centered space. And then I'd visualize myself living this life, living this abundant, happy, amazing life, the life I've got now. But I visualized that religiously, and it was something that I put a lot of time and effort into.
yeah,
I always say if you wanted to build a great physique, you go to the gym 4 times a week, you'd work out regularly, and your physique would change and you get that fit body that you want. And the mind's the same. So if you put in that kind of work, you get the rewards from it. You really do, because it's like programming a computer. What you put into your unconscious mind is what you're going to be running on. It's those programs that you're going to drive you forward and bring these opportunities towards you.
yeah, yeah,
And it's so important to do that work, to be crystal clear, to have your goals written down, and to do something every single day to work on those goals, but also to be doing the self-hypnosis and, listening to recordings. There's plenty of recordings on abundance and success out there. Read books. I used to read biographies of people that have become self-made millionaires. I love those kind of stories myself.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, how did they do it? What did they do? And especially if they had a really bad start in life, it was all the more juicy. So I was reading those kind of books, doing the goals. I was doing my affirmations when I was driving my minicab around the West End.
Yeah.
In between jobs, I'd be reading those books. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd be reading books on Richard Branson or whoever it was at the time,
Yeah.
and driving. When I was out in between fares, doing the affirmations, I totally and utterly immersed myself in it because
Yeah.
at that point, up to that point, I was sick of struggling. I'd struggled all my life in so many ways that I'd got to a point where I just wanted to taste something different.
Mm.
And it was I had such a desire in my belly to change things that it all came from that drive and that desire in me. And it didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process.
Yeah.
But I found that more and more opportunities came my way because I was raising my vibration as well.
Mm.
I was getting fitter and healthier. I went vegetarian at the time. I'm now vegan these days, but at that time I got clean. I'd stopped smoking a couple of years before, and the whole thing, it was a whole holistic process.
Right.
And it just built this momentum, this lovely momentum that carries, I feel it's still with me today.
So kind of looking forward, what's next for Glenn Harrold? What's the big shift, I guess, you want to make for yourself, but also for the world around you? Because it sounds like you've got this incredible platform.
Mm.
You've lived a life that has been amazing because you've lived it on your terms, really. Um,
Mm.
how how do you want to leave your mark? What are the key things you'd like to do in the future?
In the future, I think, now it's more about, operating from my heart, having heart-centered projects and, um, you know, yeah, it's that, it's doing good in the world, doing as much good as I possibly can in the time I've got left. When I was young and I was first affirming those goals and those ambitions, it was about having an Aston Martin. It was about having a villa in Florida and a big £1 million house.
Yeah.
And I got those things. I had all of that, and that was great. But then, as you get older, your outlook changes and your what you want from life changes. And
Mhm.
for me now, it's about creating really good heart-centered products that really connect with people and help them. And I've just made a recording called "Letting Go of Fear."
Yeah.
And it's free on you. There's a 20-minute version of that that's free on YouTube, so you can find that on YouTube. And the 40-minute version will be an in-app, which will sell for £3. So, but I wanted to make that recording because obviously people are feeling a lot of fear at this moment and anxiety. So when I was making it, I recorded it in this room and I scripted it, and then towards the end, I kind of improvised it, and I was, putting all this stuff in this feeling that we're in this. We've incarnated into this life at this time, this life of duality and good and evil in this world. We're here to be a force in the world, to do good. And I was putting all of this into this recording and really feeling it. And I've had some amazing reviews, just read a couple of reviews in the last few days where people have gone, wow, they've really connected with that feeling that I had when I was making the recording.
Right.
And that's so lovely. I also found a technique called where you get the sound is like 8-dimensional. So the affirmations I've got on the recording, I found a way to have them above your. So when you've got headphones on, you hear them above, below, to the side, and backwards and forwards. So this 8-dimensional sound, and it sounds amazing with headphones.
Yeah.
If you've got a good pair of headphones, it sounds really trippy, and you're grabbing hold of the affirmations because they're all around your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
That
so I'm
sounds
excited
wonderful.
about things like that. I find a new technique and I immerse myself in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the world now, there's everyone and his mother's making meditation recordings because you can learn NLP in a weekend,
Yeah.
plug a microphone into your laptop and make a recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me now, it's about making recordings that are really, powerful. It was always that intention from the beginning, but now I feel I'm taking it to another level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you create something of quality, it will rise to the top. Even
Yeah.
in a very crowded market, it will rise to the top. And it's that heart energy that takes it there.
Wow. Wow. That's an incredible message.
Yeah.
Um, I'm getting the signal from the wife, by the way. So I'm gonna, you know that signal.
Oh,
Um,
I know that signal well. We've got similar wives, haven't we?
so yeah, it's a nice signal, but it means move on. Yeah, because I've got things to do. So what I'd like to say is, how do people find out more about you? Because I'm sure you've caught the attention of lots of people who will watch this. Where
Yeah.
do they need to go to kind of know more about you and connect?
So my main website is glennharrold.com. I'm on all social media, Instagram, Facebook. I've got a fan page on Facebook where I'm doing, actually this Friday, I'm doing a webinar at 5 o'clock this Friday, and it'll be streamed live on Facebook, my fan page.
Okay.
That'll be there. And I've got a number of recordings on YouTube that are free. But my main thing is I've got an app called Relax and Sleep Well. So
Yeah.
people can download that app. There's 6 free recordings in there. So you can listen to those. If you like those recordings, then you can look at the whole catalogue. Got
How many?
140,
140.
yeah, inside the
Wow.
app.
Wow.
So it's good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. There's lots of options for people to get connected with you, either through your apps or your website or live events on Facebook.
Yeah.
And hopefully, when there is no lockdown, to meet you in some kind of live event somewhere in the world.
That
In
will
the
be lovely. I always loved hanging out with you guys. It's a real, we're very, very uplifting conversations with
Yeah,
yourself and your wife, Raj. So yeah, come over, come to Lagos.
yeah, we're really looking forward to it. I think we need to make that a plan in the coming months.
Definitely
Um,
when the government free us up.
exactly, exactly. I mean, there's actually so much more we could have spoken about. I have a feeling we could have carried on for another 3 4 hours because uh, there's a ton of topics we haven't even touched on.
Yeah,
But yeah, we're gonna need to leave that for a future episode, I think. Um,
anytime, Dev. Anytime, mate.
this has been fantastic. So looking forward to meeting up again,
Yeah.
and all the best with your projects. Good luck with it all.
Take care.
All
Thanks,
right.
mate.
Give my regards to the family.
Will do.
Okay, bye.
All the
Bye.
best.